Hello and welcome to yet another episode of Filmcast Without a Cause. I'm once again Jacob Rosdale.
And I'm once again Patrick Boberg.
And we're going to get to our review of Beasts of the Southern Wild pretty soon. But I wanted to talk quick about I don't know if it's really a trend, but it's something I've seen a lot in film news lately. And that's every day there seems to be a new announcement of a movie being turned into a TV show. The TCA press tour just happened, so a lot of announcements happened there a couple weeks ago. The CW announced that they're developing a TV show based on Battle Royale, the Japanese movie. NBC and Lifetime are both developing Silence of the Lambs TV shows, one based on Hannibal Lecter, kind of Red Dragon set. He's working with the FBI to solve crimes, and one is just a Clarice Starling crime show. A&E is developing a Psycho prequel called Bates Motel.
Yeah, because we need that.
At some point, I've seen announcements for shows based on Source Code, The Expendables, The Exorcist, Goodfellas, even the documentary Catfish.
And last week when we mentioned Joss Whedon's return to Avengers 2, part of that deal is that he has to create or at least put his name on a Marvel Avengers Universe television show. They're all getting into the game, Jacob. They're all getting in there.
And Whedon's someone who has a lot of experience with television, so that makes a lot of sense. And movies being adapted to and Whedon adapted a film himself to television years ago. Buffy the Vampire Slayer started as a film, and that's far from the only successful TV series that started out as a movie. Off the top of my head, I got MASH, one of the greatest TV series of all time, started as a movie. Friday Night Lights is one of my favorites. So it's something that has worked. There's been a lot of failures too. I know there have been failed series based on The Crow and Time Cop. But a lot of those were in the 90s when syndication was a much bigger deal, syndicated shows. TV offers a lot of different strengths than movies, and TV has kind of had a creative renaissance since 2000, really, since the birth of The Sopranos, where TV has really kind of eclipsed film. Storytelling mode of choice for a lot of creators and a lot of actors, too. Movies have a much bigger scale, but TV allows you to tell stories of different scales. You can go really small for an episode, tell a really intimate story, and then the next one is a chase against a big villain.
Yeah, one of the TV to film things that I always talk about that's actually an example of how it's hard to go from one where you can have such a wide story as in television is The X-Files, a show that I love and I've seen front to back probably 2 or 3 times at this point. And both those films are just not anywhere near the quality of the show, even with years later, some of the episodes obviously being dated. But it's a prime example of, sometimes they don't work going from the big screen to the small, but sometimes the small screen, the touchstone, geek shows, they can't translate for some reason.
Star Trek The Next Generation is another example,
yes.
I think, of not quite working. There's First Contact's a good movie, but I think when that series made the move to movies, they have so many characters that have been developed over 7 years. And when you have to cram in a story into 2 hours, you want to service all the characters, and that doesn't happen. Like this summer, I know you didn't see it, but I did, the Dark Shadows movie. I'm not familiar with this TV show at all, but you could tell there was just way too much story and way too many characters crammed in. So maybe making the jump to television will give some of these movies a chance to develop secondary characters and come up with subplots. You were listening when I listed off I rattled off that list of TV shows. Did any of those scream out to you as having potential, something that you would tune in every week to see?
I think I would tune in curiosity-wise to the Battle Royale show, just because it's almost upsetting, the content of that film. The Expendables could be kind of funny. I think that'd be the only way they could pull it off. Budget reasons, I don't know if they could have that many explosions, and you rarely see television shows that go with, that type of violence all the time. I don't know if they ever actually made something about The Exorcist. That's one of my favorite movies, and I have to say that quietly because I'm not allowed to talk about it around my wife. She hates it so much. But those are properties that I think have something there. And of course, I'd tune into a Marvel show, at least to check it out. If it's terrible, I would not watch it.
Yeah, especially if Joss Whedon is attached in any way to it, I would tune into it. The problem with some of these shows that they've announced, particularly the Silence of the Lambs ones, and the Bates Motel one, is that they're prequels. So I really don't see how they can have a long shelf life. I can see how the Hannibal show might be cool, CSI meets Dexter, but after a few maybe you can get a couple years out of it, but then it would start to feel tired. I will definitely tune into everything at least once. And The Exorcist, you mentioned, would be a good one. When I looked up this story, it said it was a 10-episode idea, but you can't tell me that if it's not a huge hit that they won't find a way to do.
Maybe they're trying to sell it to the BBC so they can only get 12 episodes out of it.
That's definitely subject matter. Exorcists and exorcisms. I think there's a lot of story you could do if you got some interesting characters and you diverged quite a bit from the plot of the one movie. I guess there are multiple movies, but I see a lot of potential there. We like to do a lot of make-believe. This is basically the podcast of make-believe, where we get to live in this happy place in our mind where whatever we dream up happens. And I wanted to pitch to you, Pat, movies that you think would make a good TV series, something that hasn't been announced yet, but you watch the movie and you're like, I would really like some more of this on a weekly basis, 45 minutes.
I think my first immediate reaction to that was when I first saw the movie Taken. Of course, they hint at his backstory, and of course, they very quickly show that he's a mega badass, Liam Neeson's character. And just knowing that, it's kind of the young Indiana Jones syndrome, where you're like, ooh, what happened before the Lost Ark? What happened before these, bad guys stole his daughter? I want to know about, the super spy that is Liam Neeson when he was younger. Another, obviously, cop stories, cop television shows, and medical dramas are the two most seen on TV. But kind of going in a different realm, it's kind of like a mob show, maybe. I'm a big fan of Guy Ritchie's Snatch, and I just love all those. It's a comedy, and just following the comedic, dancing about of the characters in Snatch, or at least that universe, because it's been 12 years. To see what else is going on in there. There's just too many people and too many storylines they could go into. And finally, just to toss it out there, because it'd be so quirky and something you don't see on TV, and it would probably only last half a season, any Wes Anderson property turned into a television show would just be different.
I would like to see him be a producer on something. That would be interesting. I wouldn't mind seeing a Tenenbaums like family. That could work. Speaking of movies with large ensembles, I couldn't pick between them, so I'm just going to say Mike Judge's films. Obviously, The Office has made Office Space being a TV show kind of redundant, but I remember seeing a film of his a little less successful, Extract, which was another workplace comedy.
That was a funny one.
But I wouldn't mind spending more time with those characters, and Mike Judge being someone who has a history in television. Maybe it could even be a cartoon. I'm fine with that.
If I were to pick a Mike Judge, though, it would have to be Idiocracy. It was a failure of a film, I guess, but there were some things in there that were like, you have to hit pause. They were so stupidly funny.
And there are a lot of characters that they could the president in that film is so funny. The other one I picked, it's obviously more mainstream than Mike Judge's films, is Men in Black. I think the sequels don't work because they kind of repeated themselves so much, but if you put the show on a weekly basis and maybe made it a little less goofy, maybe that's how they do the reboot. They don't reboot it for the cinema, they reboot it for television.
Well, obviously there's other spies in those films, outside of J and K that they could follow, who are also saving the world.
Yeah, and make it kind of like the reverse X-Files, where they're the people responsible for the conspiracy, and they're fighting aliens week by week. If you're doing a different adventure every week, you can take a lot more chances and do things really weird. And they've made like hundreds of aliens for that last movie that only got seen for a second each. Use those old costumes, make a TV show. That's my idea. But that's enough talk about television. This is a film cast, darn it. So we'll return here post-haste with our review of Beasts of the Southern Wild.
The whole universe depends on everything fitting together just right. If one piece busts, even the smallest piece, the entire universe will get busted.
The storm's coming! The storm's coming! Y'all better learn how to survive.
I'm your daddy. It's just my job to take care of you, okay?
A young girl named Hush Puppy learns lessons of survival from her father in a fictional bayou community called the Bathtub in Beasts of the Southern Wild.
You're gonna be the key in a bathtub. I promise that.
In a million years, when kids go to school, they're gonna know. Once there was a hush puppy, and she lived with her daddy in the bathtub.
Beast of the Southern Wild is the first feature from the self-dubbed grassroots independent film army, Court 13, an artistic collective known for their ambitious, visually impressive short films and music videos. The film, directed by Ben Zeitlin and based off of a play by Lucy Alabar, became a festival hit, winning awards at both Cannes and Sundance, and is now playing in theaters across the country. Pat, do you think mainstream audiences will be as accepting of this film as the festival audiences were? And do you now consider yourself one of its many fans in the critic community?
I would say that there's definitely something in this that people can see. It's kind of a weird mix of a child, like a childhood family film and like a real world, tragedy, an adult tragedy film. I think there's something definitely in there, and the whole Hurricane Katrina aspect of it. It's set in the time frame of Hurricane Katrina, right?
They never say Katrina, and
that's why I'm asking.
And they never say New Orleans at all. I believe this bathtub place is supposed to be a fictional, because they show a map of it at one point, and it's an island.
Well, there are islands in the bayou down there of in the Marsh Delta area of New Orleans. So I thought I heard Ben Zeitlin once in an interview mention that it was set in the Katrina world, but even if it's not, the way that it could be, there's something there that people could say, oh, you've seen that Katrina movie, that's just something you could throw on there to make it a little more. But it's a heartwarming film, and to me, it's kind of like a better way to bring in like the fanciful, wonderful imagination that was the fanciful world of like where the wild things are, because it's this girl who my interpretation is that she's imagining all these beasts running through the water, and that they constantly come back to through the film, and have a portion towards the end that you see them, and the whole movie just really, as it went on, I actually became a bigger fan of it. I was a little worried at the top that it wasn't something I was going to get into, just the way that it was put together, and the camera work was like, this is an award-winning film. But it definitely, the acting in it is great, and so much has been said about you want to give a shot at her name, Jacob?
No, not at all.
All right, well, I'll just call her Hush Puppy then. But I definitely think there's so much in here that has to deal with her and her dad, and her imagination, and her striving, even in great amount of setbacks in her life that she doesn't even realize until maybe the third act. But do you think that there's something out there beyond the lovers of art in this movie?
Yeah, I was going to try, just so viewers know what kind of name we're trying to pronounce. It's Quevenzane Wallace or something. It has a Q and a lot of U's. Well, not a lot of U's, but a lot of vowels.
There's a Z, too.
There's a Z in there. So, yeah, we're not just having fun at the girl's expense. It really is a difficult name, too. But to answer your question, this film did kind of took me back. It took me a while to adjust myself to this film, because it is so unlike anything you're used to seeing at the movie theater. I really think this does have a unique vision. I think people will appreciate that about it. I spent a lot of time trying to orient myself and gauge how much fantasy is in this film and how much realism is supposed to be. You mentioned Katrina. It's hard not to think about Katrina, but I think that there is supposed to be a little more of a folklore aspect to it, where it is kind of a fairy tale, and there is some of it going on in the girl's imagination, but you're never quite sure how much. It reminded me a lot of To Kill a Mockingbird and Scout Finch's narration, and it also reminded me a lot of Terrence Malick, and that it's not about story, it's more about creating this atmosphere and showing these visuals. And the actors in this are like, they're non-actors, but they're so photogenic. I believe the guy who played the dad was a baker.
Yeah, he was across the street from the production house, and they used to, be patron his bakery every day, and then they just thought he'd fit when they hired Hush Puppy.
It is a very moving story, and I don't know if I would recommend it for children, because there is some violence in it. But if you're tired of the summer movie season, seek the film out in the theater, because it is a visually gorgeous film, and there are props in it and shots in it that I think work as works of art. There's a house that has spikes on it that reminded me of Where the Wild Things Are, since you mentioned that. It's a very hard film to talk about because it's not very plot driven. It's very episodic.
At the same time, though, you can follow the story, and there's an arc there where you find out very early in the film, when this dad goes missing and then reappears, that he's not telling his daughter everything. So there is a definite story arc to that. And of course, within the first 20 minutes, a hurricane hits. So their world is tossed on its head again.
Thematically, there's a lot of good stuff here about learning to survive, learning to exist, teaching the next generation about strength. And the dad in this kind of does that sometimes uncomfortably for the audience through violence, but you actually begin to believe the relationships that happen on screen. And it's a good film. I don't know where it will rank near the end of the year, but it's certainly among the best I've seen this year so far.
I cannot argue with that, sir. In fact, I would definitely tell anybody to check it out because it's definitely something that they are not used to seeing.
And I bet there's going to be a lot more talk about this film as the year goes on. Beasts of the Southern Wild is rated PG-13 for thematic material, including child imperilment, some disturbing images, languages, and brief sensuality. We're going to take a quick break, and we're going to be back with some more stuff to talk about. Stay tuned. And we're back, just in time to talk about what's new on DVD, coming out August 14th. Not a lot of movies. There's one film that I think has been out on video on demand for a while already. It's called The Raid Redemption, and I've been hearing a lot of good things about this movie and its action sequences.
I am definitely checking this out. It looks intense.
I have seen the trailer for this. If you're a fan of mindless action, The Raid Redemption, it is an odd title. But
I think it's a trilogy. I think it's like the next one is like Revenge, like The Raid Revenge or something.
Okay. Well, so if you like it, there's going to be more to look forward to. And because we talked about television earlier in the show, I wanted to mention that the latest seasons of Dexter, Glee, Community, and Happy Endings, seasons 1 and 2, are coming out to DVD. I've never watched Happy Endings. I actually kind of want to check that out. I always am looking out for a new comedy, and I've heard good things about that one.
I have not seen it either.
So talking about things I have seen on DVD, though, I've seen a couple of movies this week. Tying into our review of Beasts of the Southern Wild, I wanted to recommend a film called Ballast, which came out in 2008. And I watched it the same day as Beasts, and I kind of wish I hadn't because they're very similar. They're both about poverty in the South. Ballast being a lot less fantastic. It's still fantastic, but it loses what bits of fantasy are in Beasts of the Southern Wild to tell the story about a family in the Mississippi Delta who have to deal with a person's death. And that's probably the best way to talk about it. Very effective film. I also saw Jeff Who Lives at Home, which has nothing to do with the South or being poor, but a film I had very little interest in because of the trailer, making it look like a brainless comedy, but it's actually a very sweet movie.
Is it a mumblecore film?
It's by the Duplass brothers, who are known for mumblecore, but there's not a lot of mumbling in this. Since they've become famous enough to actually hire real actors, this has Jason Segel and Ed Helms. It's actually almost the opposite film of what I thought it was going to be going into the trailer, where I thought Ed Helms was going to be this like the Ed Helms character having to deal with wacky old Jason Segel, who's always getting into trouble. But Ed Helms shows range that I haven't seen. He plays a really unlikable character.
Yeah, I liked it quite a bit, actually. I've seen this. Oh. And Susan Sarandon, who I generally is a turnoff for a film for me, she was okay in it as well. And her storyline, while completely detached from the rest, and they, as they're known to do, they kind of weaved it back in towards the end. But I think it all carries pretty well from top to bottom.
Yeah, and I believe this is available on Netflix Instant. Pat, what have you checked out recently?
Well, going with my unwritten rule of mentioning Edgar Wright every week for the rest of this show's existence, I checked out his original... I don't know if his original work that most people know about. That's the Space series. I saw the first season in a Blitzkrieg viewing, cool. Or as I believe the 24-hour news cycle has referred to it recently as binge viewing. I watched 6 episodes in a row, and it is pretty funny. To me, if people who don't know, it's about Simon Pegg breaks up with his girlfriend and needs to find a place to live. And he finds Jessica Hines, who many people may not know, but she was also in Shaun of the Dead. And they just decide to fake being a couple and move into this apartment. And that's why it's called Space, because they're sharing a space in London. But it's also got Nick Frost in it, and it's really funny. To me, it's kind of the British equivalent of Scrubs, because they throw in so many pop culture references to things that were old from the early 90s, late 80s, things like that, but not in the terrible way of Family Guy. Either way, I would highly recommend it to anybody who may not be the biggest fan of British humor, but does enjoy that style of silliness and good camera fun.
Yeah, I've been meaning to catch up with that series for the longest time.
And if I may make one other suggestion, I also caught Man Stroke Woman, which is another British comedy troupe featuring Nick Frost. All the other cast of that show have completely fallen off the map. I don't even know if they're alive anymore, but it is insane. It's like it's a sketch comedy troupe. They're all about a minute-long sketches, and they don't weave into each other at all. It's insanity. So there's another thing to check out. Not on Netflix, though. That you'll have to probably buy the DVD.
All right. Would you say you laughed so hard that you cried?
At times, sure. You could say that.
If that seems like an odd question for me to ask Pat, it's because I'm trying to transition from our random recommendations to our special segment for the week, which was suggested by Mr. Patrick Boberg. He suggested we talk about memorable films that made us cry experiences. Pat, what inspired this?
I wasn't necessarily crying in Beasts of the Southern Wild, but there were definitely some times where my eyes were welling up. Maybe I would have been full-blown crying if it wasn't for the fact that it was me and about 60 octogenarians watching the film who were all talking the entire time.
Oh.
But I was definitely getting a little teary-eyed. How about you, Jacob?
I don't think I got choked up at Beast of the Southern Wild, which is kind of a rarity for me because I know I'm a softie and I get choked up a lot. Just that trailer for that kid growing into the dirt movie. There's something about that, like it's really manipulative. They play Breakaway, and the actors are so sad at one point. So I know I'm a softie, especially in a theater. But Beasts of the Southern Wild, which did move me emotionally, I don't think I didn't get misty-eyed that time. But I do have a few times I specifically remember tearing up, and I wish I was unique. I wish I had a better story, but Pixar had a streak of films, starting with Wall-E, and then Up, and then Toy Story 3, where I know I was a mess at one point in the theater.
Oh, I have some very historic. My first time I ever cried at a movie was Rocky 3 when I was a kid. I had never seen the other Rocky films, and for those who don't know, that's the film where Mr. T fights Rocky. What was his name in the film, Mr. T?
Clubber Lang.
Ah, Clubber Lang. Yes, this is where he came up with I Pity the Fool. Mm-hmm. It's not from A-Team, correct?
Correct.
Yes. Well, anyways, in this, somebody's always got to die in Rocky 3, 4, 5. And maybe I haven't seen Rocky Balboa, but Burgess Meredith bites the big one. And as a kid, I this just, it was too much for me. I was crying pretty hard when Burgess Meredith died in that film. And I don't remember exactly what I said, but I'm pretty certain I turned to my mom or dad and was like, what is Rocky going to do without his manager? So that's my most memorable crying from seeing a film. And after that, not personally, but when my wife and I moved to Chicago, I was a big Zach Braff fan. I'd been watching Scrubs for years, and I saw Garden State when it went wide release immediately. And I did cry in that movie too. Anyways, moving on. But then we saw The Last Kiss together in Chicago when we moved there. And about 10 minutes into the film, Marita, my wife, is bawling uncontrollably for the entire film. And for those who haven't seen The Last Kiss, and I'm not suggesting you do, it's not a very good movie. Zach Braff cheats on his pregnant girlfriend, and I'm sorry I'm laughing, but Marita was crying so much in this film that I was looking around the theater and I was like, all these people think that I have cheated on my pregnant girlfriend or something. This is our life personified in film, which it was not. But it was just to see like a 100-minute movie and have, my girlfriend sitting there, now wife, just uncontrollably sobbing. I was like, it was hard for me to take in the film. It was such a display.
Well, I don't have any stories that good. I have one that's probably a little more pathetic. Another cartoon. When I saw the Simpsons movie a few years ago, I remember there's a scene near the end where Homer thinks he's going to lose Marge, and I don't know why it moved me so much. I think it's because the Simpsons have been a part of my life for so long. When this thing happened in the cinema, when it's dark and your focus is entirely on the screen, it moved me deep inside, and I got really, really sad watching the Simpsons movie.
That's pretty good. I don't know how many people have ever cried because of Homer Simpson.
Yeah, and I remember in 6th grade, I believe it was 6th grade, we had to watch the film Glory in class, and that film has a sad ending. And I remember trying not to cry in order to keep my cool But it was also dark, so I probably got away with a couple tears.
Good times.
Did you have any other stories? Or
No, I think sharing those are well enough. I remember another film involving Marita in Chicago when we went and saw Babel, which I'm a big, I'll pretty much see anything that Brad Pitt's in just because he generally plays really weird characters. But in that, he just played a normal dad, and it's not a good movie, in my opinion. But when towards the end, when he thinks his wife is, gonna die, I was crying. And looking back and seeing it again, I don't really know if the movie deserves it. It's just something about being in the movie theater, I guess. With the lights out, locked in.
Exactly. And this is cheating a little bit. This is the last story I have, and I don't have any stories as good as yours. But I remember when I was I don't know, I must have been 10 when The Stand miniseries played on ABC. There was a character played by I should have looked up the actor's name, but he played Dauber on Coach. And at one point he sat. Oh, I don't know. At one point, something bad happens to this character. I can't believe I'm spoiling the Stand miniseries. But I was devastated. I cried myself. I left the room and just cried and cried. It was so sad because I think the character was deaf or something. It was a very manipulative thing to do to kill off the handicapped character. He was either deaf or just a little slow, or maybe I'm getting him confused with Dauber again. I don't know, but I just remember the Stand miniseries devastating me as a child. Just couldn't stop crying.
Explains a lot, Jacob.
Yeah, exactly. Well, we're going to wrap up. I'm going to go cry a little bit more, and then we're going to come back and wrap up the show.
I'm not gonna cry.
Well, we're about ready to close this turkey up.
Thank you for using my phrase.
And we're going to talk a little bit about what's coming up in theaters. August 15th, the trailer that made me cry, The Odd Life of Timothy Green, is coming out. And in limited release, August 17th, Compliance, which is a film about... Did you ever hear the story about the guy who prank called a McDonald's and accused someone of stealing? And this is a film, not a documentary, about
It's supposed to be a very faithful recreation off of court documents. And from, of course, the internet and the story, I looked it up, and the trailer, it seems to be very, very close.
Yeah, it divided audiences that saw it in film festivals because it's so hard to watch. But it's interesting. I think I would rather watch the next film, Cosmopolis, the new film by David Cronenberg and starring Robert Pattinson. Really cool trailer. Don't know when that'll actually go wide, but it's opening in some theaters on August 17th. What is opening wide? Sparkle, which I believe is a remake. That's the last film with Whitney Houston. I know some Whitney Houston fans who are interested in seeing that.
I'm not one of them.
Neither am I. Paranorman, stop-motion animated film from the studio that brought us Coraline. Looks promising. And The Expendables 2, even more expendable. What are we reviewing next week? Well, we'll be catching up with...
The Bourne Legacy, one of my favorite movie series. And we're going to top that explosion super spy cherry with The Expendables 2.
Yes, it's an explodorama. And maybe we'll have a special guest. Could it be Steven Seagal?
I actually have a call out to JCVD's people to see if we can have him high kick on our show. I don't think he realizes that it's a podcast and not a television show, though. Don't
tell him. And it's going to close out the summer blockbuster season. And speaking of the summer blockbuster season, and it's coming to the end, I mentioned this last week, we want to have an awards type thing for our special segment the following week. So we want your ideas on what kind of categories we should give out. We want to hear what your favorite summer movie was, first and foremost. But we also want your ideas on who your favorite villain was.
The best CGI you saw in any of these films this year. Who destroyed a city the best?
Exactly. So go online, post on our website, filmcastwithoutacause.com, and we will read them on the show. We want to hear from the Flock. And we're going to have some fun in a couple weeks about that.
Of course, to tell us any of those things, you need to know what the website is. It's filmcastwithoutacause.com. Leave a comment on this show. Fill in what Jacob just told you about. Of course, you can also hit us up on Twitter, which, of course, to find us there, it's Filmcast WOAC. Once again, it's our Twitter handle, Filmcast WOAC. And then lastly, there's email, filmcastwoac@gmail.com. Oh, that sounds familiar. Why? Because it's the same as the Twitter handle, filmcastwoac@gmail.com. That's how you get a hold of us. And you can find us on iTunes and, of course, download it directly from the website, filmcastwithoutacause.com.
Tell your friends, go to the website, click on a link, click on an ad, help us out. Anyway, that'll wrap it up here. We'll see you next week. I'm Jacob.
And I'm Pat.
Bye.
You know, I don't think anyone's gonna tell us when to leave.
Yeah, good call, Garth. I'll bet we're just gonna sit here, and when they're finished, they'll fade to black.
I can't believe they did that.
I told ya.